What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Smash Pod, brought to you by Smashup Fantasy Sports, the only next-gen fantasy game that lets you choose your players, choose your Smash cards, and dominate your opponents. We're here on a Reaction Monday, just following Week 5, here to talk through Chef's top 5 risers and Hawk's top 5 fallers of the week. Just to get you set for Week 6, we're already moving and shaking. We're already thinking forward. We still got Monday night tonight, but we had a lot of big performances and a lot of shitty performances as well to talk through. Before we dive in, though, we got my man Hawk here. Hawk, what's up, man? How's it going?
Not much. I'm in New York, the Big Apple.
The Big Apple, where dreams are made and you're still on your casting couch adventures.
I will go to every casting couch in America until I get famous.
That's right. That's right. Hopefully you don't get too famous and you stick around for more of these risers and fallers, but you ready to jump into them?
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. All right, so like we always do, we've been swapping every week, switching up risers and fallers. This week, I'm going to do the risers. Hawk's going to do his fallers. So like we said, let's jump in. These are Chef's top 5 risers heading into Week 6. Number 1, Brandon Aiyuk. He finally had an alpha wide receiver type of game. 12 targets, 8 catches, 147 yards. He looked like every bit of a $30 million receiver. Finally, the buy low window on Aiyuk is closed. Number 2, the Cincinnati offense. Like clockwork, when the calendar hits October, the Cincy offense is humming. Burrow threw for 5 touchdowns. The offense put up 38 points in a huge performance, although they lost in OT. But this defense is so bad, it's going to force them into a lot of shootouts going forward. Number 3, Drake London. He had career highs in catches, targets, and had 33 points on Thursday. The Kirk Cousins, London Drake connection was on full display, and if Atlanta continues to pass at a high volume, it will be London to the moon. Number 4, Tucker Kraft. This was one of Chef's smash plays last week. Kraft flashed big playability. He got more red zone targets and usage, and he scored 2 touchdowns. Love and Green Bay trusts him, and he's going to be at least a top 10 tight end going forward. And then lastly, number 5, Tank Bigsby, with a big day of 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. He helped lead them to their first win. The Jags have been buzzing about Bigsby since camp, and he actually outsnapped ETN for the first time all season. This is at minimum a split backfield going forward, if not Bigsby making his move to take over. So that's Chef's top 5 risers going into Week 6. So let's chop it up a little bit. Hawk, what are your thoughts? Let's start with Brandon Aiyuk. What do you think about his game on Sunday?
Good. I mean, it was great to finally see a guy who gets paid $130 million, has been joked about, come through. If only the Niners had a kicker.
Yeah, if only. Can Aiyuk kick? I mean, if he's getting paid that much, he should be able to kick field goals too, right?
I mean, what is it with the Niners trying to play entire NFL games without a position? They play the NFC Championship without a quarterback. They're playing football games without a kicker. For a couple of years, as a Niners fan, they played with no wide receivers. So
I don't know, man. I don't know. But that loss to Arizona was definitely disappointing. But I think I am encouraged if I'm an Aiyuk owner going forward that I think that rust has finally come off. And he actually did look very, very good. He was getting open. Him and Purdy were hitting. He looked like he was heavily involved. And I think my concerns about him this season are going to be removed going forward. All right.
fantastic.
Cincy offense, let's talk about that. I mean, Cincy unloaded. They lost in OT, but they still dropped 38. Burrow looked great. Obviously, Jamar Chase was a beneficiary of that. He had 193 yards, 2 touchdowns. Higgins had 80 and 2 touchdowns. Chase Brown, he's making a move in that backfield, 54 total yards and a touchdown. What do you think of that Cincinnati offense on Sunday?
Yeah, they're a team I bet heavily on in fantasy this year. So I've got Burrow in a couple leagues. I don't have Chase as much because of where he's drafted, but I've got T. Higgins. I've had a mix of Moss and Brown, not knowing which one would necessarily take the reins. So really encouraging to see a couple great games in a row. And if you're someone that got Burrow in the later rounds, you've got to be feeling really good about yourself.
Yeah, he's looking great. And it's just something about that offense and that team in general. They just don't get their shit together until like week 3, week 4 every year, and then they just turn it on. But this is the offense that people were hoping for when they drafted individuals off that offense.
The NFL have thought about doing something where maybe instead of waiting till October, they let teams play a few games before the season starts. Maybe they call it the preseason or something. I don't know. It's kind of a crazy idea.
That's an interesting idea. I think maybe try that out. Yeah, maybe they could like practice and work out all like the rust from the off season.
Let's not get crazy now. Let's not get crazy. I think we just go
practice.
some games. Yeah. Practice? You're talking about practice?
You talking about practice? I mean, the thing is that Cincinnati defense is very bad, right? And so Burrow is going to be forced to throw the ball a ton. You're going to see more big games out of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Their
Burrow will
locks
never
and
be
line.
game scripted out of a game. Put it that way.
Yeah, exactly. And I like Chase Brown now making a move. Zach Moss got hurt on Sunday. Looks like he might have a high ankle sprain. And Chase Brown was already kind of knocking on the door, making a little bit of a move for more opportunities. And this could open up things for him. So Chase Brown managers are probably excited about what they saw. All right. Number 3 was Drake London. This was actually last Thursday. Kirk Cousins threw for 500 yards that game. I don't think that's going to happen every game. But what I think was exciting was to see their connection. Drake London was getting open early and often, and Kirk Cousins was looking for him. Do you think this is sustainable for London going forward? Because he did look really good.
Well, I mean, absolutely not, because Kirk Cousins is not going to throw for 500 yards. Now, will he be better? We're going to feel better about him. I mean, maybe too old of a Seinfeld reference, but before we're like, hate the Drake. Now I'm like, love the Drake. This is who we're waiting for the whole offseason. I still think it's going to be a bit up and down. I still would be nervous if he's someone I took with like a top 12, 13 pick, which he was there for a few weeks in the preseason before kind of like when ADP went back down. But look, I put him on the bench for a week this week. So, of course, he goes off. He's going to be back in my starting lineup. And I don't quite think this is like the Isaiah Likely 20 point to 4 point. I think this is going to be a little more sustainable with the way he plays.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why I think this is somewhat sustainable, not the 500 yards of passing, but Kirk Cousins' pass attempts have gone up every game since game 1. So just really quickly, it's gone from 26 to 29 to 29 again to 35 to 58. So 58 is clearly the outlier here, but you can see the volume rising, the comfort in Kirk Cousins passing. I mean, in Minnesota, they just put the ball in his hands, and I think that's what they were looking for when they paid him all that money. But we'll see. I mean, I'm encouraged if I'm a Drake London owner, obviously.
I'm just listening to that pattern you had going on. By week 16, he's going to be throwing like 3,000 passes. So,
yeah,
major numbers coming for London.
You know what? I think there's good vibes right now for Kirk Cousins in Atlanta. So I think that's going to permeate through the rest of the offense. All right. And number 4, Tucker Kraft, baby. Like I called this. I think he looked really good. He was really cheap in Smashup. And I think everyone thought Dontavian Wicks was the big Green Bay pickup off the wire last week. But it was Tucker Kraft. Big boy had 4 catches, 88 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had a big play where he's running away from the secondary, had a big stiff arm. And then they threw him a tight end screen in the red zone where he scored on his second touchdown. So they're designing plays for him. He's flashing big playability. Clearly, he's being trusted by Jordan Love because he has big numbers with Love in the lineup again. So I think Tucker Kraft could be a big, big play and big pickup for the rest of the season.
You said it. I listened to you. I started him a few leagues. I benefited. We don't have a lot to add except for the fact that Wisconsin cheese, Kraft cheese. Come on, there's got to be an endorsement deal there.
He could just wear one of those big like Kraft singles like type of decoration on his head or something like that, and just run around.
Kind of a cool like Tinder Hinge like promotion, right? Kraft singles starring Tucker Kraft. When it
Yes. Okay, we're going down the route of bad dad jokes now. But Kraft, just an interesting tidbit here. Of all the receivers they have, right, the vaunted kind of receiving core of Green Bay, the young flashy receiving core, Tucker Kraft had a 25% target share. So really interesting. Lastly, Tank Bigsby. He's been coming on slowly for some time now, starting from training camp. He got injured and knocked out of a game in week 2, which I think put a small little speed bump in his rise to relevance here. Sorry, in his 3 full games this season, not counting the one where he was injured, he's got 264 yards rushing, which is about 88 yards per game, 2 touchdowns, averaging 8.25 yards per carry. I mentioned he out-snapped ETN, out-carried him 13-6 in this game. What are your thoughts? I mean, Bigsby looks real good right now.
Yeah, when he was drafted to this last year, just kind of disappointing season. I don't know if you remember from training camp, there were some really bad vibes and stories about maybe he could even get cut. Was looking great, and then he just turned it around, lit a fire, and now this is kind of the Tank Bigsby that the Jaguars thought they were drafting.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not helping that at the same time ETN is struggling. So Bigsby's rising, ETN might be falling a bit. I don't know if that's a preview tier list. I haven't looked at it yet, but he could be on someone's falling list right now. But that's the 5 risers for week 6 from Chef. Time to kick it over to you, to Hawk. You get to discuss who you think are the top 5, or is it the top 5 or bottom 5 fallers? What's the best way to say that?
I don't know. It's it's like a bottom 5's the bottoming out, rock bottom. Ooh, that's good. Like rock bottom. Maybe we get Rock Bottom Brewery to sponsor us. The rock bottom.
Rock bottom. Well, whatever it is, I'll turn it over to you for your 5 fallers.
I've hit rock bottom. It goes deeper. Here's the Hawks top 5 rock bottom fallers. Number one, Dalton Kincaid. Just another dud of an effort with, sorry. Number one, Dalton Kincaid. Just another dud of an effort with 2 receptions, 34 yards. That's without Shakir. Look, at this point, you're not going to cut him. He's fine. He's a tight end, but I think any high hopes for him are dashed. Number two, just all the Raiders running backs. Zamir Madison at this point doesn't matter. They got outplayed by a 31-year-old Amir Abdullah. I think at this point, the running game is kind of toast. Number three, Andy Dalton. Look, he's great for Carolina's offense. He's lifting the tide there a bit. But I've heard a lot of murmurs this last week about, is Andy Dalton a startable fantasy quarterback? Maybe a spot start, but this week serves as a great reminder. 126 yards, no touchdowns, a pick, and 2 fumbles. This is who Andy Dalton has been. All right, number four, Jackson Smith-Njigba. Look, he had that huge week in week 2. Still a really good NFL player for the Seahawks, but from a pure fantasy perspective, he's averaging, I think it's about 40 yards per game. That's not going to get it done. Fine as a bye week fill-in, but not somebody I want to rely on every week for my lineup. Number 5, Breece Hall. Man, I hate to say it. The talent is still there. I still think he turns it around. In fact, maybe a buy low opportunity, but hard to say he's not falling. He's only hit 100 total yards once, averaging 3 yards a carry, just as many fumbles as touchdowns. And finally, I'm going to give you a bonus, number 6, Deshaun Watson. I'm making him a bonus because hopefully he's not on anybody's roster, but it's now getting to the point that when do the Browns just accept a sunk cost and maybe turn to young Rich and Jameis? And that's my bottom 5, maybe my rock bottom 6.
Rock bottom 6. All right, let's revisit this a little bit. Your number 1, Kincaid. This is a tough one for me to talk about because I definitely have a good amount of Kincaid shares. And I think we looked at this week as a possible, I don't want to call it breakout game, but definitely some opportunity with Shakir being out. With that passing game in Buffalo, there's some issues there.
Yeah, and it's just even the supporting numbers aren't quite there for him. If you look at his advanced stats, he's number 15 in route participation, number 10 in targets. That might not sound bad if you're contextualizing the numbers we've talked about for receivers, for example, where there's a lot more of them. But for tight end, again, you didn't draft him to be the number 10 to 15 tight end. A lot of other advanced stats there, yards per catch, he's like number 9. A few other, I'm not going to list a million stats here, but the point is he's acceptable. He's fine. If you have him, you continue to run him out there. But I'm not even trying to necessarily buy him low. I think at this point, he's just a good, stable tight end. But obviously, if you drafted him higher, you've got to be disappointed. What do you think?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with that. Quick question for you. Who would you rather have rest of season? And this is maybe just relevant and recency bias, but would you rather have Tucker Kraft rest of season or Dalton Kincaid?
I actually think it's the same. I think Kraft had a really exploitable matchup this week. A couple guys missing from the lineup. I mean, you said he had 4 receptions, a couple big ones. Kincaid can do that too. Obviously, Kraft just did it, so you've got to be feeling a little better about him. But I think they all just kind of fall into that middle blob of tight ends. But again, if you got Kincaid in like the 5th, 6th round, like some people did, and we're now saying he's in the same tier as a guy that just got picked up off waivers this week, you can't be feeling great.
Yeah, but I mean, if you look at the production of Kraft, not to kind of oversell Kraft here, he had a huge week, obviously this week, but even last game in week 4, he had 6 catches, 9 targets, 53 yards, and a touchdown. So he's already scored 3 touchdowns in 2 weeks, and that may be beyond the output Kincaid has had all year long. So I know there's still potential in a Josh Allen offense with Kincaid, but I'm definitely nervous about owning him going forward if he'll be able to put up more than 6.
Sure. Right? And touchdowns are fickle. When I look at the yards Kraft has had, is pretty on par with Kincaid. But again, similar, but that's not a good sign. One you just picked up was a chef recommendation.
The one you drafted as like a tight end 6 or 5, right? Yeah. Okay. Raiders RBs. And maybe we didn't have a whole lot of hope for them going into the season, but their running backs have just not been great. So let's talk about it.
Demiro's like a favorite of the 0 running back targets, right? He's the kind of guy like, I'm not going to draft him for the first 5 rounds. I'm going to go grab a couple guys like Zamir, and they'll kind of keep me going until like one of the handcuffs breaks out. And Zamir's averaging 3.1 yards per carry. Madison, 3.9. Combined, they're averaging 2.8 receptions per game. As I mentioned up front, they got outplayed last week by a 31-year-old Amir Abdullah, who literally the backup for Derek Carr like several years ago. I didn't even realize he was still in the league, and now he's outplaying the 2 young guys. The line's a mess. The offense is a mess. Both quarterbacks are a mess. I think that
The Raiders are a mess. The Raiders are a mess.
But the end of last year, when Antonio Pierce took over, Zamir played well. There's that little glimmer of hope that maybe it was a turnaround. It was a mirage.
Well, I think this is a good lesson, right? Like, don't always bank on a 4-game sample size during silly season for football, right? Like a team that's out of it, they're just, I don't want to say they're tanking, but, they're just running some fools out there. I mean, I'm done with Zamir. I have him on one team. I took a flyer on him, kind of those late rounds, like you mentioned. Definitely not even inserting in my lineup, let alone maybe even considering rostering him even more. He's probably drop status at this point for me. So, all right. Next up, we've got Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle. We were so high on him, at least on what he was able to do for this offense overall, which I think he's still been able to do. But
Absolutely.
you're saying if you pick him up, is he droppable now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you should have picked him up in the first place. This had come up before. It came up in another podcast I did where they're like, hey, is this a guy who could be a plug-in? He played well the last 2 weeks to varying degrees. Dude, it's funny. There was a meme on Instagram where they're like, flashback to 2013. Like, oh man, Peyton Manning's on a bye. Should I pick up Andy Dalton or Joe Flacco? And now it's the same thing in 2024. And there's a reason why you didn't pick up Dalton back then. There's a reason why
Well,
you don't.
stuff with Flacco, right?
Hey, Flacco, I ain't gonna say jack about Flacco after last year. I've learned not to doubt him, but Dalton, leave him on waivers. Maybe look, Deontay Johnson, if you got Chuba Hubbard, good for you. But Dalton's he is who he is, right?
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully you didn't have to rely on Andy Dalton at all. But Flacco's definitely been balling out still. So if you have Flacco, good for you. All right, next up, JSN. He flashed a little bit. I believe it was in week 2. But other than that, has not really shown up in the box score for owners.
Yeah.
So why don't you like JSN anymore?
So to be clear, I still like him as an NFL player. I still think he's got a lot of promise. But after that 117 yards in week 2, he's had 39, 51, I think this week 40. Now, he did get in the end zone this week, which is great. Obviously, don't want to rely on that. The yardage isn't there. And again, I'm not going to go list a bunch of advanced stats here, but suffice to say, he doesn't really stand out in a lot of areas. He's not doing particularly high in, yards per route, yards per catch, target share. So it's just kind of a situation where I think he's a really talented young player, but he's in an offense that has some other focal points. So he's probably a year or two away from really where he's going to make an impact on your fantasy team. Now, bye week fill in, roll the dice. You wouldn't want to rely on him.
Yeah, and I think the underrated part about why maybe he's not getting as much opportunity as people would like is Kenneth Walker is being utilized a whole bunch more in the passing game now, right? So I think Walker had 7 targets, and he was a big part of, that short range intermediate game, which is kind of what JSN's supposed to do, right? So if you're giving the ball to Kenneth Walker, which you want to do, he's a fantastic playmaker. It's got to come at the expense of someone else, right? Whether it's Lockett and maybe more so JSN, because JSN operates in that part of the field a little bit more. So yeah, don't love JSN's prospects going forward. Bye week guy, sure. Flex depending upon the matchup, but not someone that's going to break into lineup.
There's injury. So again, if you want to pick him up and hold him on your bench, go for it. But I won't put him in the lineup right now. If I'm playing Smashup or DFS, he's not really a target at this stage.
Yep, exactly. Okay, cool. So lastly, man, this one's kind of tough to see, but probably something that owners of this player need to hear. But Breece Hall.
Yeah, this is a quasi-intervention for fantasy owners out there. Now, the other thing is I really actually don't know this so what is this intervention. You're not going to drop him. You're probably not even going to trade him. He's a tough guy. He's a better version of kind of your assessment of Kyle Pitts from last week.
Wow. Did we just put Breece Hall and Kyle Pitts in the same conversation?
In the sense that this guy was a top 5-6 pick, right? Obviously, Pitts, you got some rounds later, but you've got to be frustrated. If you took him top 6, you're probably not trading him and getting good value. You've got to keep running him out there and starting him. But at this point, you've got to be a little bit concerned. 3 yards of carry, 2 touchdowns, 2 fumbles. Actually, still really involved in the passing game. He's one of the top running backs for targets. So he's only about number 15 for carries. Isn't quite getting him. He's only getting 3 yards of carry when he does. It's a bit of a scary situation. If I at least thought, look, he had to do better with Aaron Rodgers and Zach Wilson. But he's not.
I mean, that's the funny thing. With the worst line and worst quarterback, Breece Hall was amazing. And now with a better line, supposedly Aaron Rodgers back at QB, he's just, I would say for his draft capital, just struggling. It's like, make it make sense, right? It's tough because you're not benching Breece Hall at all. He's locked in your lineup going forward for the foreseeable future. At least with Kyle Pitts, you could be like, you're just sitting on my bench until I really see something. With Breece Hall, I feel like you have to leave him in your lineups, right?
It's tricky. There's not a lot of real world analogs for it, but I was thinking about it. I mean, you're with the best woman you've ever been with, and you're probably worse than you've ever been. So you and Breece Hall, a lot in common, but owners aren't.
We got it. Yeah, I want to stay in the lineup. She's not going to divorce me.
She can't trade you. She's probably tried, but I'll give you
no takers.
For Francis and 2 first-round picks. No takers
yet. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe that's a decent deal. We'll see.
We should talk about Deshaun real quick because This is I
I'm
don't.
so sick of Deshaun Watson, man. Let's talk about it then. Okay, Deshaun Watson.
Deshaun Watson, 54% completion percentage this week, 60% on the season, and like an anemic 4.8 yards per pass attempt. Like, and I think it's something like 8 yards per completion. Like, it is bad, bottom out numbers. And the reason I bring him up again, dollars actually gets harder the further into the year you get because you're starting to see the same names, right? And guys like Deshaun, hopefully some people drafted him, but he's probably not owned. But he's bringing down this offense. And my real question for you, Ming, is at what point do they kind of just accept this on cost and bring in Jameis Winston or just try something different?
I think a lot of people are calling for Winston Watson. They do owe him, I think, another like 70 million towards the cap next year or something like that. Maybe that number is crazy, but I know it's a phenomenal number. I think Stefanski came out yesterday, was quoted saying like, "We're not making a quarterback change." So he's already planted his flag. Now, coaches say shit all the time and can reverse course, but that was pretty definitive, right? It wasn't like we're losing, we have to evaluate everything. It wasn't like some generic statement. Like he said, we're not making a quarterback change. I have to coach better. We have to play better. It's like, no shit. But like, there's a big reason why you're not playing very well. And one of them is the main position in football, especially with your offense. I mean, their offense is super struggling. It's not like there's been like some weird turn of events this week. It's been happening
No,
all season long.
pretty clearly the quarterback. I mean, Njoku's back. Like Judy actually looks like a decent pickup. Cooper's we talked about earlier in the week, still putting up some pretty elite underlying metrics in a lot of cases. It is just Watson is the big issue, and I don't know how long you tie yourself to him. I mean, I don't know how long, Ming, if I start showing up to the shop pod shirtless and swearing with like boogers running out my nose, you almost replaced me with Andrew already. So
Yeah, you're already on thin ice.
I just don't think there's a happy ending here.
Look, they're struggling. And when things are not going well, especially in football, I mean, you have to look to make a change. And when you're looking to make a change, you need to look at what's going wrong, what's not working well, and where you might need a spark. And quarterback is one of those spots where it's like you have to have effective quarterback play in order to win in this league. And I think Cleveland thinks they have a solid roster. I'm not saying they think they have the best roster, but they have a pretty solid roster outside the quarterback position. So why not give it a shot? And it doesn't have to be permanent, right? You don't have to say like, hey, we're installing Winston for the rest of the year. Just like give him a shot, give him some preparation, see what he can do, and then give Watson the opportunity to earn the role back. I mean, there's a quarterback room there. Have the opportunity to win the roles back in different positions all the time. Quarterback can be one of them, but it's clear Watson's not really working out right now. And Winston is one of the better backup quarterbacks in the league. He's thrown for 5,000 yards before.
Or they
I
could
say
just
they should give
tackle instead of the guy that committed sexual assault. That would have been another option that they Stefanski just making some interesting choices. That's all I'm gonna say.
maybe not a bad idea to get that guy out of there. But that also would help my Amari Cooper shares, and I know it would help your Amari Cooper shares as well.
Hey, listen though, I said tunnel. I know we're gonna get back to this next week, but I said tunnel vision of love on Amari. That worked out like
Yeah.
gangbusters. He got a lot of inaccurate targets this week.
Yeah, a lot of balls just bouncing around the floor. It's being sailed out beyond where Amari
It's like a
Cooper can
Deshaun
catch the
Watson
ball.
massage, right?
See what you did there.
Oh,
All right.
on that note,
Okay. Well, we got a bonus no better rock bottom faller to finish with than Deshaun Watson, but I feel like he's been there all season long. We'll see if he makes another appearance next week, but that wraps up our episode of Top Risers and Fallers of the Week. Remember, we've got one more game this evening to wrap up week 5. We got the Monday night game, and then we're going to swiftly dive into the public tournament for week 6 as well, which opens up super late. I think it's like midnight at Tuesday nights, right? The lineup's open. Is that correct, Hawk? If not Wednesday morning.
Tuesday. You want to think about that curve from Tuesday to Wednesday.
Yeah, Tuesday to Wednesday. But either way, I mean, it's a way to jump in, play more fantasy football for free, and win free money and prizes. So we definitely invite all of you to do that. We appreciate you guys listening, and we will see you on the next pod. Hawk, why don't you take it away?
Hey, you want to see how low this rock bottom gets? Subscribe on whatever podcast software you're listening to. And then go to smashupsports.com and register to play. Free weekly tournaments, league play, and single player coming very soon. And then go to @SmashUpSports on all the different social media, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, you name it. I think we've got an AIM account still. And follow us there. And then we will see you next week on the casting couch with our rock bottoms.
All right. Good luck, everyone. Wrapping up your week 5. I hope you guys have a Monday miracle. We'll see you next time. Later.
Peace.